what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, and of course, I'm not alone as I trek into the month of November. Remember, well, actually, today is the 5th of November, so don't forget that shit. Anyway, I'm joined with...
Alex, who's not having technical difficulties.
I know. This is actually the second time behind the scenes. We've recorded the intro to the show. Just randomly Discorded, decided to fart, and it's like, yeah, you know what? I don't like you. Ah!
Yeah, and some voice services are working, some weren't, and it's just like reboot it, and we're good.
So anyway, we're back. But it's like we never fucking left. So anyway, yes, we have a lot to talk about on this show. As you've heard last week, we put out a lot of content, which was surprising considering how busy we've been. The last couple weeks of October for reviews and games and movies have been tremendously full. Right now, I will have a review of Luigi's Mansion. I just didn't get a chance to get to it before the release date on Halloween. Man, that date worked out perfectly for that. I'm actually working on 2 reviews, which you'll hear here in this show. One of them with Alex as an extended look. We're going to be looking at Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, coming to us exclusively on the Nintendo Switch from Sega. We're also going to look at modern Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which I want to talk about for just a second. One of the really cool perks about being a influencer, and that's me using air quotations because I'm hip like that, sometimes you get sent these influencer packs, and it's not meant to influence your ability, whether you like the game or not, or the package, or whatever you're being sent. It's just meant to say thank you for being part of the community. We hope you like this stuff. Please share it on your social media, whatever. So occasionally I get these from Dungeons and Dragons. A couple of movie companies send me things, but this is the first time I've actually been considered a CoD influencer. So this is like career milestone, I guess, because I really came back hard with this franchise when Call of Duty Advanced Warfare came out, which was Sledgehammer Games. So anyway, I got this influencer pack from EB Games Canada and Activision, and this is really sweet. So evidently, I got this package like last Thursday or Friday. It was pretty early in the week. No. It was before the game came out. So anyway, they sent me this waterproof duffel bag / backpack, and it's completely waterproof. I think you could even submerge this thing if you wanted, though I'm not gonna fucking try it. So it was full of all sorts of COD-related goodies, and you can actually win the same thing that I got. So if you go to goingdark.ca, if you're in Canada, or visit your local EB Games store, you can win this. So anyway, what I got was a copy of the game for PlayStation 4. I got an Astro A10 headset, and I love Astro headsets to begin with. I got a Call of Duty Modern Warfare hat, an exclusive to Canada East Faction pin, so I might throw that on my N7 hoodie or something. Call of Duty socks, or in my case, sock. It wouldn't be Call of Duty without doing Doritos, so I got those without our almighty knowing and all-giving God, Jeff Keighley. I got a brand new limited edition PlayStation controller, which is the one that has the PlayStation face buttons across the touchpad, so that's really nice. And I got some controller skins, and I think I mentioned a hat. So yeah, they're supposed to include a hoodie. Mine hasn't shown up yet. I think it's held up in customs, but the prize pack value is worth something like $500. And they're like, hey, Mike, just share this on your social media. That's all we ask. So here's me fulfilling my contractual obligation. But no, we are going to talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare today. And well, we did like it. We got some problems with you people, and this is where you ask you people. Oh, yes, you people. So me and Alex are going to talk about that as part of our extended review during our news segment today. But we're also going to be talking, as I mentioned, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. And we're also going to talk about the Ultraman Blu-rays, which just got released from Mill Creek. So, as I've been talking for a few minutes, I understand, Alex, you have recently had a chance to go check out Terminator Dark Fate. I have not. Is it good?
Yes, and with a slight no. The slight no is for a movie with $185 million budget, the CG is really bad.
That surprises
like
me.
especially the first 30 minutes. All of the facial transformations, it looks like a PS2 game, or like I don't know. Let's be polite, like a PS3 game, like
Early PS3 maybe.
like okay. Well, for instance, the CG looked better in Terminator 2. Like the actual like nano, because now it's all like nanobot liquidy stuff, looks fine. The liquid part, like the liquid metal aspect that you see in all the commercials for it, look great. But when they do a close up on their face, everything looks like I don't know, like a 3D model, like a video game model, like where there's not enough texture, there's not enough, like everything looks off, like it's painted in, but only for maybe 3 or 4 key scenes, and then it's perfectly fine at the end. I'm like, why didn't they just take, I don't know, 6 more months and another $25 million? Like, but then again, I still don't see how they spent 185 on it, because Arnold doesn't command 25 million a picture anymore. Maybe he does, but like I thought the movie cost like 100 million to make, but the fact that it cost nearly 200 million, and the fact that it's Tim Miller that directed it, the guy that did Deadpool, I'm kind of surprised at that. But like other than that, like it's good, and there are going to be arguments like, oh, it's another one where it's like another timeline. No, this is the canon timeline now. What happens here is what happens, and then the others are alternate timelines or what not even like what ifs. It's like the idea of what happens in T1 and T2 because of those films. You now have the Back to the Future Splinter universes. That's how the best way to look at it. It's like now there have been diverging paths of how things go. Some like this would be like Earth Prime. This is the Prime timeline, and then the others are, brought upon BCD brought upon in the multiverse of what could have happened, and that's actually how James Cameron has described it. So they, for instance, those other 3 films, so 3, Salvation, and Genesis, they're not in a connected universe. It goes 1. It's like the Highlander series. It's 1, 2, then 3, 1, 2, then 4, 1, 2, then 5, and then 1, 2, and 6, which is officially now the 3rd film.
Jesus, that's confusing.
It is, but Highlander. If you're a Highlander fan, you get it.
But now that's the kind of universe we're in, because like back in 2018 when Halloween came out, Halloween 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 didn't happen, or Resurrection or H2O. It's just the first movie happened. It's even retconned that Laurie Strode is Michael's brother now. So, okay, sure, let's go with that.
Okay.
And we're in this new era of filmmaking where I guess now they can make proper sequels, and I'm okay with it to a certain extent as long as it doesn't piss on it too badly.
This had the right tone. I went back and watched T2, and I'll still say T2 has the best soundtrack of the bunch. I'm kind of surprised that they had some nods to it, like there's little musical cues here and there, and it took a bit of the humor that, remember in the 3rd film there was a little more humor.
Yeah,
it had a little bit of that, but in the same tone that T2 had it.
There was just enough to bring levity to a certain scene,
and there's like maybe 2 to 3 eye winking moments, but they're not like stare at the camera eye winking. It's like that, without spoiling anything, like any plot thing, there's a part where Arnold's character, sees the sunglasses from T2 on the counter and goes to put them on, and then just decides not to, and the music gets very tense for a second, and then just walks away. So like it's got that little little thing here and there, and there's one other spot, and they're flying over I think it's Texas. It might be. I think it's supposed to be Texas, and you see in the trailer where they're fighting on a plane, right? And like people, and they start like falling. Well, there's one part where the new Terminator falls into a building, and they're playing the music from the bar at the beginning of T2.
Oh, that's funny.
And it's the exact, like I'm not saying like it's a copy. It's the exact song. And like a lot of people in the theater didn't really get it. I did, and I was squeeing like a fanboy fangirl. And there is one other character, and it's not spoiling anything, because everywhere I look online, nobody's pinned or pieced it together basically, and it's hinting at a larger universe or hinting at some throwbacks. There is a character that they encounter that works in the military that to me, I immediately went, oh, I know who that is, but nobody else seemed to know who that was. My brother figured it out, but they, in the credits, give the person a slightly different name. And to me, it appears as though Dyson's son is in it.
Oh yeah, and they've referenced him in Terminator: the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yeah, see, because like it's a black military officer that has a pretty predominant, important role in the film that isn't in the trailers, and also in the credits is credited under a slightly different name. Mm-hmm. But the background of the character, he unquestionably helps her for no reason, and they seem to have a history together. I'm like, is that just supposed to be was it Danny? Was it the character's name?
Yeah, Danny, yeah.
Danny, like that's just who it appeared like. And when we looked at the age of the character, like it's the right age, but they didn't say that. Nobody else seemed to get that. People in the theater actually went, who's that supposed to be? Like I heard people say that because there's no explanation as to who the character is. And I'm like, oh, so in my mind, he grew up, joined the military and is sort of helping her on the side.
That's cool.
Basically, because it's a character that works in intelligence and counter AI, and like surveillance, which would be perfect to help Sarah Connor, who obviously has been on the run from the military and from the psych ward people for like the last 30 years. So who better to help her stay hidden than a friend in the military?
Absolutely.
So yeah, and that's it. There's no spoiler because that's me speculating. There's no spoilers in that as towards the plot, except that character is critical, and it was surprising that they didn't give enough characterization to some things sort of just happen in here, and it feels like there were scenes cut for timing.
Yeah, I have a feeling this will hopefully be a fairly fleshed out Blu-ray. Although, unfortunately, this movie's not doing very well at the box office. It did $29 million. It has to make $470 million estimated to break even.
They expected it to make 40 in theaters.
47, I think.
Well, they said 40. They said 40 to 47, and it made 29 to 30. After adjustments, worldwide it'll make its money back. It's not going to be. It'll still get greenlit. The problem was they made the biggest mistake they could have made and said that James Cameron was involved, and then said he was just an executive producer. It doesn't feel like a James Cameron movie. It feels like somebody doing a really good James Cameron impression.
Well, at least he had some sort of oversight, and I would trust Tim Miller. I just hope they haven't run this franchise into the ground. But you know what? We can talk about this all.
No, yeah. The final thing is Arnold and Linda are fantastic, and the other actors are okay, and it has a good story. So there, bam, go see it if you can, because it's worth the full price of ticket admission.
Yeah, I'm hopefully going to get around to seeing it this week when I find 10 minutes to breathe. Anyway, like I said, we got a lot of stuff to talk about on this show. We're going to talk about some Halloween stuff that just happened during the week. One of them is really fucked up. Let's just say don't go trick-or-treating in New Jersey. And a long-awaited sequel has finally got their cast together. We'll see what happens. But, of course, we got news, weird, and more. That's all coming up right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, published by Sega exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. A review code was provided to us for the purposes of this review. So this is my first time playing actually any of the Mario and Sonic kind of crossover games. I know they've been around since I think the Nintendo Wii, and they're supposed to be basically a meeting, a clash of champions, the best of your side versus the best of my side, and we'll compete in a variety of sporting events because reasons, I guess. But this one's a little bit different. Being in the latest generation of consoles means they can do a lot more, and this one actually has a story mode, which is kind of the big appeal here this year than just being a collection of random minigames. They actually decided to give it a kind of narrative thread, if you will, to string things together. So the basic story is Mario and Sonic are in Tokyo 2020 for the Olympic Games along with all their friends and randomly Dr. Eggman, and he will always be Robotnik. To hell with that name. I hate Eggman, stupid name. And Bowser. So anyway, Eggman invents this device called the Tokyo 64, which is like a game console, and it transports everybody. Well, Mario, Sonic, Toad, Bowser, and Eggman back to the Tokyo Games of 1964. and they have to figure out a way to get home by collecting gold medals. And eventually, in the present, so to speak, Luigi and Tails have to help out by gathering their friends, and it's all pretty paint by the numbers, pretty goofy, but it is pretty serviceable in the regards that at least they tried. I think that's actually kind of commendable, that to give a sports title a story mode, I mean, it's not like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or whatever it is, or Tony Hawk's Underground, or even one of the NBA games had a story mode one year. I think even the NFL games did. So yeah, don't go here expecting Shakespeare, but it is fun. And the big reason to play this is because you want a collection of sports-themed mini-games. And you're going to get that here. There's like over 20 of them, and some of them are in this retro 8/16-bit style, which is really, really, really charming. There just aren't a lot of them. There's less than 10. Although there are unlockable ones, but even they're only single-player ones, so The 3D ones are kind of cool, though. The ones that I gravitated towards are a lot of the new ones, like karate, surfing, and skateboarding. Skateboarding is the one I immediately went to, as I'm a big fan of the Tony Hawk franchise. So I kind of figured, all right, will my skills from Tony Hawk Underground or Tony Hawk 4 translate here? Am I going to be able to manual revert and, you know, over all these ramps and everything? Am I going to pull my insane combos here? And kind of, it works. The controls for a lot of these games, they feel kind of clunky, which is kind of strange. For example, I would consider myself a reasonable Street Fighter 4 player, or Street Fighter 5 player if you want to get a little bit more modern. Either way, I'm pretty good with complicated button combos. So I'm playing the minigame for the floor routine for gymnastics, and the button inputs are relatively simple. I'm having trouble putting those in. Ask me to block a combo, I can do that. Ask me to do a focus move in Street Fighter 4 to block something, that I can do. Here, I'm having trouble with button inputs. I can see kids getting really frustrated with this. In fact, this is one of the few times I've actually almost rage quit a game because I wanted to walk away from it so badly. But that's not to say there isn't some fun to be had here. Some of the mini games are quite fun. Surfing is really cool. There's kayaking. There's like one of the retro games is kind of like Duck Hunt, where you have to like go shooting. But a lot of it just boils down to button spam and following really simple button inputs. So that being said, what you get here is a charming collection of minigames that's held together by its presentation. And what do I mean by that? The graphics, I think, look pretty cool. Like just seeing some of these characters, seeing Mecha Sonic in 3D is a first for me, so that was really neat. But also hearing the music for this game. The music in this game is quite good, especially the retro stuff. It does sound like old Nintendo, old Genesis, and I really, really do appreciate that. However, though, asking $60 for this, I don't know. It's not to say I didn't learn something, because there's also unlockable trivia in the game. Like, in fact, I found out certain Japanese stadiums have wood from each of the Japanese prefectures to represent Japanese unity. So that's actually pretty freaking cool. But at $60, that's a pretty big ask right now. So if you do want to get this for your kids, or to have another minigame collection, you could do a lot worse, you could do a lot better, but at $60, I'm going to say wait for a deep, deep discount on this. You're bound to see something, maybe Black Friday, maybe Boxing Day, or maybe at some point next year. But I'm just going to say maybe wait on this one.
News on the march!
And we are back here at TWIG. Thank you for joining us, because, hey, you decided to download us. Aren't you fucking glad you did? So yes, it is time to talk about the news that happened around the big blue marble this week. And of course, well, we have to talk about a Halloween story, because it just happened a few days ago, and this one's kind of a big deal. This one I didn't think would happen. I was actually watching a YouTube channel called Good Bad Flicks, and they talked about the history of Hocus Pocus and how that movie started out in like 1983 and had a bunch of people attached to it, most notably horror legend Mick Garris, who you may have seen most recently in the In Search of Darkness documentary. I think they talked to him at least a few times. But what am I talking about? Hocus Pocus. And there's been rumors circulating for years about a Hocus Pocus sequel, or there's going to be a reboot, or there's going to be something involved in the project. And for a while, it was maybe tossed around the idea it might be on Disney Plus, or it was going to be a reboot for TV. Well, looks like we're going to be getting a sequel. A true sequel, and according to Sarah Jessica Parker, who played one of the Sanderson sisters, Sarah Sanderson, they're all up for it, and this was just recently confirmed. I know I saw this on IGN, but I'm following this from Lad Bible, and they're generally pretty good. So evidently, Parker shared a still from the film, which showcased her character alongside Winnie and Mary over on Instagram. Said Halloween 2019, one for the books. Naturally, it didn't take long for the comments to all turn to one thing. One hopeful Instagrammer commented any chance of a sequel. They followed it with a praying emoji and a fingers crossed emoji. And lo and behold, Parker didn't only respond, but also wrote, "We have all said yes. Now we wait." So I guess we find out what happens, because it turns out the original Hocus Pocus, when it was released in 93, didn't do so well in theaters because they released it in the middle of fucking July against Jurassic Park and The Firm. So that's some good planning.
Also, now there'd be no reason for them to say no because they all need money.
Well,
and the older they get, the more witchy they look.
Well, I know Bette Midler is still doing musicals right now. Sarah Jessica Parker has her own company. Sarah and Jimmy does a lot of...
Sarah Jessica Parker doesn't do much. The other one doesn't do much. Bette Midler, I joke because she's still, I think, very big in the musical Broadway type stuff scene.
Well, I know Sarah Jessica Parker runs a production company. She also stars in, I think the show's called Divorce. I want to say, I'm not sure.
I thought you were going to say some sort of horse show because
it's. I'd like to know the process when she went from being very cute and very attractive in Hocus Pocus and Flight of the Navigator to not looking the same when Sex and the City came around. But
it was the nose job she had in the 80s. The first one was fine, and then people don't realize that if you get plastic surgery that young, like in your early 20s. As you age, your skin doesn't look the same. So then you have to get extra things to touch it up and all this. That's what people don't realize. When you alter your face that dramatically, because if you've seen her before and then after, it's been 30 years. Think about 30 years of having your face stretched. It changes how you look.
So hopefully now it hasn't been confirmed that this is going to be a sequel or a reboot, but if you watch the original 93 movie, the book where they were summoned from is still intact. So they could, in theory, do this. They get resurrected again and hilarity ensues. I think this would be great because it's always shown on the Disney Channel or Freeform or whatever the hell it's called now as part of their 25 Days of Halloween or whatever it is. The movie really got a life on DVD and Blu-ray. In fact, the story of how the Blu-ray special features came to light is amazing. It all came from one guy's collection because the Disney theater or the Disney company didn't think this would be worth keeping in the archives. But one guy kept everything.
One of the artists, was it Sec Decorators or something, did it? And didn't he leave a note and it just says, "Give it all back"?
He's like, "I'm not leaving until this is all back in my collection."
So he stayed with them while they scanned it.
Yeah, and that's pretty friggin' hardcore for them to go out of their way and do that. So if you do get a chance, check out the 25th anniversary. I think it's 25 years. It came out in 93. So 25 years?
That'd be that's 26 now, but... Yeah.
But go check out that Blu-ray. Fantastic transfer. It looks great. Next story. This one's a little local to us, to me and Alex. As you guys may know, those of you especially who follow me on Twitter, I'm a big fan of CoD esports. Now, I haven't followed a lot since Team Caliber last fielded a team, and that was in 2017/18 for Call of Duty World War II. And they didn't field a team last year for Black Ops 4, and I've been kind of been left in the wind. Who am I going to follow? I still like watching competitive CoD. There's still a number of players I like Kenny, Looney, and other players like that, like names you recognize, or Chino. Well, turns out the CoD World League has opened up franchise opportunities, and they're asking major cities or organizations rather, pick a city, pay your franchise fee, which is ridiculously huge, like tens of millions of dollars, if I understand it right. And your team can be hosted. So one of the cities that got picked is Toronto. So evidently, Toronto now welcomes the Toronto Ultra. So Overactive Media welcomed the full roster for the Call of Duty team, and I think they play their first event in January.
Now, are they going by, like, what would the short form be? Would be TU or TOU or something?
I think it's
because I'm assuming that they're going to have logos and they're going to have hashtags and everything to follow them. So I would say TU probably.
I think so, something like that. So their roster, I recognize some of these names. The name I recognize most notably is, I think he's a former TK player, is Looney, and that's Danny Lozia, and he's from Venice, California. I'm actually surprised. There's a guy who used to play for TK, and he's from Mississauga, and I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head. But I'm really surprised they didn't snag him, but I think he's playing for, like, I want to say Optic, but I'm not sure. But yeah, there's one guy playing from Toronto. His name's Miran, and I can't pronounce his last name. It's beyond my abilities. He's from Toronto. Other players are coming from New Jersey, Tennessee, Spain, Denmark, Scotland, and the UK. So these guys had a press conference down at the Peace Collective flagship store down on Ossington, and I had all 10 players come out. And I think, like I said, the first COD World League event, I think, starts in January. I'm not sure where. We actually get invited to these things all the time where they're supposed to fly us out. So me trying to travel right now ain't going to fucking happen.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way it is.
Weren't we invited to one in Texas last year?
Dallas.
Yeah,
we got invited.
You got invited, and then you said, "Hey, Alex, would you like to go?" And I went, "Hey, I don't have a passport currently." But we were invited, and they were going to cover the whole cost of everything. So I got to get my passport.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great event too, because one good thing, one bad thing. I think that year the event got swatted or something called in a bomb threat, but that was one of the events where TK won back-to-back championships. So they got first place, and that's like $250,000 or something ridiculous. So I'm really hoping the Toronto Ultra can really make a scene. Actually, I'm going to mention some of the other teams here. Actually, one of the guy who is like the brand manager for them is a guy on my Facebook, and I've known him for years. Just let me see. So some of the other teams are the Atlanta FaZe, so that's FaZe Clan, Chicago Huntsmen, Dallas Empire, Florida Mutineers, London Royal Ravens, Los Angeles Guerrillas, Minnesota Roker, don't know what the hell that is, New York Subliners, Optic Gaming Los Angeles, that'll be one to watch, Paris Legion, Seattle Surge, and Toronto Ultra. So I'm hoping we'll get a COD Toronto at some point where we'll actually have a championship happen up here. I think that'll be pretty kick-ass. I would try and find a way to go to that. So yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, across, like, reading my friend's Facebook post, he said, through mid-October and today, we have launched 13 new brands across 11 markets in 4 countries, including the new Call of Duty brand. That's pretty impressive to get all these countries cooperating together. And like I said, there's a lot of money at stake here. That's why a lot of teams like 100 Thieves didn't put in a team this year because of the franchise fee, if I understand that properly. TK hasn't fielded a team for a year and change, presumably because of this. And esports is a thing, man. It's because this isn't a small investment. I know cities like Philadelphia, for example, invested in a new esports arena, and it's in the tens of millions of dollars at the very least. So I'm looking forward to this. I guess we'll kind of keep Toronto Ultra coverage on the show. I'll probably make a mention whenever there's a big COD event. I'll probably talk about it during the intro. But I think that's neat. All right, moving on to our next story. Well, BlizzCon happened this weekend, and oh boy, did it ever. Protests with Winnie the Pooh being a highlight for me. But of course, everybody's already talked about Overwatch 2, Diablo 4. Everybody fucking knows that. Moving on. However, though, there were some people who had left the company recently, and these are some lead devs. Whether they're working on new things or not, according to a statement from Blizzard, StarCraft lead designer and Heroes of the Storm game director Dustin Browder had left. Former Hearthstone production director Jason Chase and former Hearthstone director Eric Dodds left the studio a few months ago. Blizzard goes on to make it clear that the development is a collaborative effort attempting to reassure fans who may have worried at how the games may be impacted. It's kind of surprising how this kind of went under the radar for a little while. According to reports, there was a title that was codenamed Ares, and the title was supposed to be a shooter placed in the StarCraft universe. And evidently, Browder and Dodds were linked to it. But this is the first time this has been canceled, because this sounds really familiar. Like, if you've ever followed Blizzard and StarCraft Ghost was supposed to come out in like 2006, and they keep working on it, and they keep canceling it, they keep working on it, keep canceling it. Motherfucker, just make the goddamn game. Because I would buy that fucking day one. However, that being said, if you've been following the Blizzard controversy over the last little while, they kind of addressed it at BlizzCon, but they really didn't. They said they were sorry, but not what they were sorry for. So, still taking Chinese money, not so cool. The fact that the United States government has gotten involved by sending a non-bipartisan letter to Blizzard to CEO of Activision, Bobby Kotick. Maybe you done fucked up. And maybe it's just that time to get out of Dodge, because a lot of people from prominent game companies are leaving. I know we've seen people jump ship from BioWare. I know the guy who was the community lead or something for Anthem just recently left. That game is DOA, I assure you. That game won't even make it to 1 year. I don't know, Alex, your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
It's a rough time to be a game designer right now.
You know, when you said you felt like, you don't want to have to remove your N7 backpack and put the COD one up, it's probably a good idea to do so.
Yeah.
Just don't hold on to hope right now. I'm incredibly worried about Dragon Age, because I love that series. That literally will be the game that makes or breaks that entire studio at this point. And it all depends on how much meddling they get from corporate higher-ups.
Yeah. I mean, to swing this at Blizzard, these guys need a home run right now, because when Blizzard announced Diablo Mobile, everybody was like, fuck you, don't want that, don't care. And their response was, well, you guys all have phones, don't you? No. This year, kind of funny how we got Overwatch 2, Diablo 4. There's some new WoW thing too. I don't know. And it's like the community I wouldn't say they've forgotten, but a lot of the outrage has definitely kind of quieted down. So the public has a very, very small memory for certain things when you give them... What's the famous quote from history? You give them bread and circuses, and they'll forget, or something like that.
Sure. Let them eat cake. The cake is a lie?
Yeah, basically. It's like you're just giving them just enough to distract. And, I mean, Overwatch 2 looks cool. They're supposed to add some story elements into it. I think somebody had said this on Twitter, and I don't know how true it is, but I think your items carry over from the first game. So if you bought a bunch of skins, they carry over. That's good.
It's a 1.5 game. It's just a couple extra modes, maybe a little bit extra polish, but it's not on next gen. It's using the same engine with some tweaks. So, like, as far as like some of these big companies, they put out really impressive trailers. And
Blizzard has mastered the short film.
Like, if you released an entire movie with the visual quality that the Diablo 4 trailer has, you would win best animated picture of the year, and you might even have a contender for best picture. Literally the only CGI that I've seen come out of a game studio that looks as good, if not better than that, was the Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15 movie from Square. The only other company like known for doing something that high quality. Because let's be real, BioWare never had like the best CGI cutscenes. They just had the best stories. But like as far as CGI stuff, it was always Blizzard and Square Enix neck and neck for like pushing the technology. So as cool as the trailers were and even the Overwatch trailer, it was fantastic. As cool as the trailers are, that part of the studio has always been fantastic. It's how does the gameplay work?
Yeah, now I know it was playable at BlizzCon, which there's a new map based on Toronto, so cool. But I don't know. I guess we find out. I don't think any release date has officially been announced, but we'll stay tuned and see what happens with that. To turn things to a more political bent, and this is about as political as we're going to get here, Twitter is announcing a total political ads ban. So in a surprise announcement last week, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said the platform has decided to ban all political ads across the globe starting in November. We've made the decision to stop all political advertising on Twitter globally. We believe in political message reach should be earned, not bought. A political message earns reach when people decide to follow an account or retweet, and paying for reach removes that decision, which should not be compromised by money. I think this is a really good thing for Twitter, the fact that they are doing this, which will really impact, I think, the elections in the States in 2020. I know it would pay some kind of I would be shocked if Twitter didn't pay some kind of an impact in the Canadian election that just happened up here. Facebook is still allowing political ads to be bought, which can be outright lies.
This is the problem. There is the problem is the one guy running Facebook. He has no empathy. He has,
because he's a lizard person.
But like, joking aside, he's like, it's been talked about how like he has either Asperger's or something on the spectrum. He's like one step away from being a sociopath. He doesn't have empathy for people. He doesn't understand how people think. He's admitted that. He's admitted that he doesn't understand how people feel things the same way. Like, he knows that he's an outlier, but then he runs his company the way he wants to run it without really thinking about how people are going to react. And his thoughts are, well, I just want fucking money. So I don't care how it affects anybody because I don't care about people. And it's that was that entire Social Network movie was basically about that, how he just doesn't care about people.
Now, the person who's in charge of Facebook's chief operating officer, Sheryl Sandberg, argued earlier this month, and you'll love this, that dishonest political ads should stay on Facebook because they represent important political discourse. And Facebook even told The Verge, which is the article I'm actually getting this from, that it wouldn't even bother to fact-check claims made to those ads. So in theory, if I wanted to run a political ad saying Mark Zuckerberg fucks goats, I could do that.
Well, see, you're failing to see a very important point here, Michael.
That he's crazy?
No, that Cheryl's a cunt. So, like,
how can you say that with a straight face?
Yeah,
political discourse.
He's basically hiring and surrounding himself at the top with people that have no empathy,
or yes men, or yes women.
No, there's There's a difference between a yes man, yes woman, and somebody who truly gives no fucks about people. And that, because if you have any conscience whatsoever, you could not. It doesn't matter. This is not a left or right or political. If you're somebody who's politically left or politically right, you for the most part cannot be that morally corrupt.
Yeah, like you should have some moral center.
And I'm willing to say that like 99% of politicians, for the most part, can get pushed to the point where they're like, "Fuck it, I can't deal with this. This is too corrupt." Yeah, there are some that aren't, obviously, like Trump, but there are people that get to a point where they're like, "Fuck it," and you never hear about that with anybody. There's never a revolt or people leaving Facebook because they've hired corrupt people.
Yeah, and they just keep running the same ads, and now there's talk of election interference from foreign governments. Even in the Canadian election,
they're not even afraid. Like, here's the thing. All it would really take is a government inquiry into them and be like, here's the thing, it would affect social networks, basically people around the world, and they probably think there's too big to fail, but all it would take would be the FBI or the Federal Trade Commission or something like that in the States to just go, hey, guess what? Facebook, you're fucking done. We're shutting you down completely. Doesn't matter about how much money you have, because they can get to a point where you're like, you're so corrupt that you're basically traitors because you're harboring people that are like, you're allowing a platform and encouraging people basically with your actions to circumvent political discourse, and basically they can accuse them of treason. And if they did so, they're fucked. And they would shut down. But yet the people that at the top of Facebook are so arrogant, they don't think they could ever be shut down. But believe me, there's like, if they really wanted to, they could shut them down. And they could say, oh, I can go to another country. It's like, try it when every single person in your corporation's in jail for treason.
Well, I think right now, Zuck is testifying to something on Capitol Hill right now. I'm not 100% sure of that.
Not under criminal charges. I know he's subpoenaed and he's talking about stuff. But the problem is,
they need to nail him on something.
Optics are a big thing because he's so greedy and stupid. Like, when it comes to social issues, he doesn't realize that he should step down. He should step down as the face of the company. He can remain on top with stocks and everything and all that kind of stuff. You need to hire somebody that when you look at them, they look like they have a soul. He has the cold, dead eyes of a sociopath.
There was something, I saw this, coincidentally enough, on Facebook. If you look at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum statue of him, it looks more alive than he does.
See, this is the thing, and that's the thing. Like, you can tell, and it's like, oh, it's superstition. You can tell somebody's personality by their eyes, and he really can. He has cold, dead eyes, like he doesn't have any feelings. So,
because he's a reptile person.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, now that we've talked about lizard people, because that's what this show's all about.
What were we talking about again?
We were talking about Twitter banning, which is weird because Jack Dorsey...
Which, by the way, we're going to be promoting the show on Facebook.
Which is funny because the Twitter CEO looks like a hipster douchebag, but anybody who runs a social network company looks stupid to begin with.
Oh, the worst... I'm going to go on a rant here for a second. When you play online games on your phone and you have all the ads that pop up, have you been getting ads that pop up now for all those gambling ones? Because now that there's, was it Amazon opened a gambling online casino in Canada for the first time ever because it's the first time it's legal. Anyway, well, there's all these ones where it's like all these fake Chinese ads because they have like really terrible English talking over it, but they think they're sounding smart, and it shows like white people and black people that aren't Asian, like winning all this money on like scratch tickets that you wave your finger over the screen to win. Mm-hmm. And they're like, and it shows like fake bank accounts of like Canadian Royal Bank or TD. And it's like, the so-and-so app just deposited $13,000 that you won from scratching a ticket online that you paid nothing for. And this is an entire lottery made by ad supported, blah, 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 blah. And then it'll show the CEO, and it'll be like some 19 or 20-year-old douchebag. It says like, this CEO invented a new casino that is entirely ad-based. That's not how casinos work.
And the house always wins.
Not to mention, like, they're the most ridiculous ads, but people are getting suckered into them because people are fucking dumb. but it's that sort of stuff that should be illegal. Yet, like the app marketplace for ads is terrible, rife with stuff that, like, if you showed those ads on television, your company would be shut down.
Yeah, you wouldn't get past the FCC or the
because it's on the iOS store or on the Google Play Store, they can throw whatever stupid ads they want, and it's clearly all these apps made by, like, the Chinese government. And then they just, like, it's like, oh, you play this and yeah, you can win $100. Maybe they will deposit $100, but would you ever give your bank account information to an ad that to an app that comes from China?
Yeah, I'm not giving my information to a foreign power. And it's kind of funny. They'll allow these apps on the App Store, yet if you want to track the Hong Kong protest, this was a while ago, they were shutting down those apps that were appearing. So go get them, corporate overlords. I'm sure you're going to do us right.
There we go. And the end of Alex's rant. Just, they're so hilariously bad, those ads too.
So anyway, be careful with Jada. Don't trust the Zuck. He's a robot person or a reptile. So anyway, we're going to take a break here on This Week in Geek. And what we're going to do right now is give you our extended review and thoughts on Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
And now it's time for another special feature.
Hegel. Yes.
20 years of civil war.
There's nothing simple about it.
This is bigger now. Chemical weapons have fallen into terrorist hands. They could be anywhere.
We need to move fast.
What do you suggest?
A business trip.
We are looking at Call of Duty Modern Warfare on the Xbox One. Review code was provided to us by the publisher Activision. So, this game is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. This game had been in development for a couple of years, and it was promising a new engine. It was going to be something gritty. It was going to be dark. It was going to be controversial, even in its portrayal of the characters we've come to know and love. So this is sort of like a soft reboot for the series with Captain Price and Gaz. Although you don't see Soap in this game, you don't see Ghost, but whatever, you do see Captain Price for the majority, and you do play with Gaz. So anyway, Alex and I both played this on Xbox One. We did both beat the campaign. I've put probably about 20 hours in the multiplayer, and Alex and I played a few hours of co-op last night. And, well, we've got some thoughts on this game.
I should probably give my background in this, as I'm not a hardcore COD player like you.
Yes.
I was, back in the day, back in high school, I was a Medal of Honor kid, back in the original PC versions. I played COD 1 and COD 2. And I don't mean like Modern Warfare 1, 2. I mean COD 1 and COD 2. I then played... I didn't play any of them until Ghost came out. And I powered through that and really liked it. And then I didn't play any of the other ones until this one. So
wow.
I am not casual in that I've never heard of it and I never beat it. But I've only actually played to completion before this 3 of the titles. 2 of which being the original 2. And then Ghost being the more modern one. Because back when the PS4 came out, I was like, what games are available? And that was available. So I am not a big multiplayer shooter fan. Not that I don't enjoy it. I'm just not always playing those ones. That's not my online jam usually. I'm more of a single player guy. Now, in playing this, I'm coming into it from a different perspective than you in that these characters are all new to me. So yes. I am probably their target audience. They're probably wanting to pull in people that either have left for a long time or are completely new to the story. So to me, Price and all that, I had no idea until literally I didn't want to read anything about it. I had no idea until after I beat the campaign that these characters were from the previous Modern Warfare games and that they were used differently here. So yeah, also my setup compared to yours, you have a 1080p television with the Xbox.
Original. Yep.
And I have a 4K HDR TV with the Xbox One X. So that's the difference we're going to see between them.
So yeah, so let's talk about the campaign first. The campaign should take you anywhere between 6 to 8 hours to play, and for the most part, it's really fun. it does get controversial as fuck at times.
Not as controversial as I thought it was going to get, like, because everybody made it a big deal of it. Maybe I'm just jaded, or maybe I'm so used to seeing crazy shit in the news anyway that
I don't know. The whole child soldiers thing kind of caught me.
Oh yeah, there was that part of it. Yeah, and there were a couple parts that it wasn't the most graphic or out there thing, but it was very believable, which is probably what made it. It's more horrific to people because it's not as outlandish as you'd think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a great line from Captain Price near the end of the game where he says, "We get dirty so the world stays clean." And it shows effectively war is not an easy subject. It's a very gray area. It's often fought by cowards. It's a proxy war. You're fighting on behalf of someone else's interests. And it's good though. I mean, I do like most of the game. I did like the section. There are two sections I didn't like. The section I didn't like, first off, is anything involving sniping. That sniping section where you're out on the road. I think the level's called the Highway of Death.
Yeah,
I hated how the sniping worked in that level.
It took me.
It's more realistic.
It took me 25 minutes just to be able to start it because I couldn't get a handle on the actual sniping where you had to shoot the canisters from way far away. It just didn't seem to line up. Even when I saw that it hit, it didn't seem to detect it. I actually had to exit the game and load it up again, and then it worked on the first try. So that might have been that it just glitched and wasn't loading the target for me.
Another level I didn't much care for is I'm trying to think, what was the other one I didn't like? This one was pretty early on too. It's where you first meet Farah, and you're going through the work camp, and you have to sneak using the cinder block. That was annoying.
It was a little annoying, but I got the hang of it. Like you died there, and then you immediately knew, okay, I have to do something different. So it was never a case of being too puzzled with what to do. The part I didn't like, there are two parts. The earlier part I didn't care for was I did not like when you're having to go through the tunnels and everything gets set on fire. That sucked.
Yeah, that was annoying. Not hard, but annoying.
Yeah, no, you could do it, but it kind of sucked. I found myself holding my breath the whole time because I was like, well, am I going to go the wrong way? Am I taking too long to move?
Yeah, the fact that you could smoke or you could get passed out or die from smoke inhalation, which nice touch for realism, but I was having a hard time finding ladders, and it wasn't until I saw the prompt where you could aim on the ladder and use your pistol that I kind of realized, oh yeah. But other than that, I had a really good time with it. I like the levels that happened at night were really well done. In fact,
yeah, very true.
You're hunting. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just before I lose my train of thought, the only other one I didn't care for was flashback episode. It was pretty dark, but like not as in like tone. I just didn't care for. I felt like it was forcing me. It was padded out, but it forced you to die a whole bunch of times just to pad out the gameplay. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like it was unnecessarily more difficult than it should have been.
I wouldn't say the difficulty in this game wasn't so bad. I did feel you weren't as bullet spongy as other titles, and that may be just my experience as I've played a lot more CoD than you. I did feel like you did die a lot faster, but that maybe just be the tuning of the weapons. Plus, if someone gets a lucky headshot, that's just how it is. However, though, let's talk about some of the good things. So the game's campaign, like I said, it'll take you 6 to 8 hours. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I like that. I think it's probably my second favorite CoD campaign that I've played, maybe third. My top one is Advanced Warfare. You can't change my mind on that. It was fun. It was great. Kevin Spacey's still a creep, but he played a great bad guy.
Yeah, it held up. I would say it's better than the one I played in Ghosts. And I mean, I can't really compare it to the first two because it's such an early time in first-person shooter history that it's not really relevant. But it was better than Ghost. I would have said it would have been nice to maybe get 2 more missions out of it to bring it up to that 10-hour mark. But as it was a brisk enough pace, and it didn't feel like you were doing anything monotonous. There was a lot of variety in what you played. Unlike, I found Ghost to be a little more repetitive. This was every mission had a very different dynamic to it.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't bored from mission variety, and that's something that I did like. I like the house clearing mission. I really liked, although almost everybody pulled a gun on you, so you really couldn't go wrong with not killing the right people. Although there was an achievement for doing it in one shot, for like kill each person that was trying to attack you with one bullet. The Piccadilly Circus level kind of surprised me just because you could shoot civilians.
Yeah.
I actually tried to get the achievement, but I think I clipped a girl by accident, and I was like, "Oh shit, I'm sorry."
Well, and I think that was the point, right? That you, in the
it's
chaos,
chaotic.
Whenever something chaotic was happening, like explosions, no matter who you shot, you were fine. It was only when you were doing the sneaking missions you weren't supposed to shoot civilians.
Yeah. But other than that, I just think this is one of the better campaigns. Like I said, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's phenomenally well done, well acted. I like the new character of Alex, who was like Farah's guy from the CIA. Farah's a wonderful character. I hope she continues on in the franchise. I'd like to see her join 141. Probably won't. I guess this sets up the events of Modern Warfare 1, if you really want to look at it, because I think that's supposed to be Suleiman. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, I really liked it overall. It is some disturbing content at times, but that's the point.
It gives a warning before you start the single player campaign every single time you load the game up, saying that this is mature content. You have to agree to it every time you play.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because there are some decisions you can make, and they openly ask you, are you in or are you out?
Oh yeah,
and I was in.
Because how did you kill him?
Straight to the middle of the forehead.
I did not. First of all, I shot the kid in front of him, and then it ended the mission.
Oh my god!
I wanted to see.
You could do that.
Yeah, you can shoot the kid or you can shoot the mother. But I shot the kid right in the face, and then they both scream, and then then it goes, killing innocents will not be tolerated, and then it reboots. And then I killed the mother, and the kid screams, and then it did the same thing. And then I shot him in the dick, and then watched him bleed out. His family screaming as he's bleeding out. So yeah, that's where my mind went when playing it. From an audio standpoint, I have a surround sound setup. It was really good. There were a lot of dynamic options you can set for like midnight playing, where it lowers the dynamic range so that things don't like explode all over you. Visually on the Xbox One X 4K HDR looks really good. Not overly not overly like over the top dynamic when it comes to the color palette because of where it's situated, but it looked good. I found a couple graphical issues. I found randomly sometimes boxes in warehouses would just sit there and spinning in circles for no reason. But I didn't have any texture pop in or anything. So everything else was fine. It was just like one or two times where like one asset would just be spinning in place kind of hilariously.
I had some texture pop in, but that only happened during co-op, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Graphically, it looked good on my launch Xbox. Some of the cutscenes look phenomenal. Like some of the best facial models I've seen in a long
certain
time.
Characters look better than others. Price looks really good. Farah might be the most realistic rendered person I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah, like it's amazing the amount of detail that has been put into a lot of these characters. Even Alex looks really, really, really good. And even the way fabric moves. One thing to note about this is sometimes you see night vision done in games, and it's always that green/white light. The best example I can think of that's done it well is Splinter Cell. It looks really good. But here, I can actually make out what I'm shooting at. I can make out details in the night vision. It looks good.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just waiting to pick up the ball there. Yeah, there wasn't.
No, I was trying to think of, while you were saying that, if there's anything else I noticed in particular. The smoke and particle effects were really good. Again, like short of having like a super duper $3,000 PC that has RTX and everything, playing it in 4K HDR on the One X is probably the best experience you're going to get, at least from home consoles. And I would say it was good, but it was hard to really see, like, where it really shined was in like the characters' facial animations and stuff, because most of the scenery is very bland in color because of where it takes place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Piccadilly was nice and vivid. The factory, like with it, the fire effects looked really good.
Yes, I was going to say the fire was top notch. Also, some of the stealth aspects, having to shoot out lights and read light meters while you're sneaking around, had a very like Metal Gear Solid feel.
Yeah, and that level, I decided to go all Rambo, so I had literally a wall of corpses in front of a door. I just sat there and waited for them with a shotgun. My God, that was fun.
I went into the crypt and then threw a grenade out and had them funnel themselves into like a death box.
So let's talk about the multiplayer. The multiplayer, this game is still very much in its early launch window, so some of this will change over time. The game's meta is still developing. As of right now, maps are okay. They're not great. There's a few I like. One I don't like is the bridge. The bridge, whoever holds the bridge, holds position. That makes sense. It's sight lines. If you got a good sniper rifle or a good DMR, you're going to be in a really good position in that map. But also you can use airstrikes and just take care of them that way. But I guess I would call it the Russian Village. I'm a big fan of that map. That's probably my favorite. Piccadilly, I don't like the spawns in it. Another problem with multiplayer is the spawns. They are being addressed in a future patch. There was just a title update for this within the last couple days. They're supposed to be changing some pretty big things towards the end of November, from what I understand. So stay tuned for that. And I'm just waiting to find out what happens with that. That being said, certain guns are better than others. In fact, one of the shotguns that you unlock very early on, if you're playing the new 2v2 gun mode, you can pretty much hit them from across the map and one-shot them.
Yeah, pistols are kind of useless until they do something to tweak it, but...
Yeah, pistols, yeah, no. One of the top CoD YouTubers, Drifter, says, pistols are effectively useless, so expect a delay on in-depth. And if he's having trouble, that's a very big indication that there's a problem.
Yeah, and you're much more of a multiplayer guy than I am, so I'm mostly staying out of that because to me it's like I could be like, it's all great, but then I have no idea how it compares to the others.
Yeah, like one of the things I do like about this, because this is a new engine developed by Infinity Ward, time to kill feels great as of right now. Unlike Black Ops 4, people felt kind of bullet spongy because you had 150 health. Here, I think you've got 100, but people die in 3 to 4 shots. That's typical. And headshot multipliers for most guns make a lot of sense. The gun I primarily use is the M4A, often considered to be the best gun in the game right now. I like it because I've got it. It's leveled up the most. I like the way it feels, and I've always been a fan of the M4 weapons platform. Time to kill, like I said, great, fantastic. That and things feel snappy. People wanted a return to boots on the ground Call of Duty, unlike Advanced Warfare and Call of Duty Black Ops 3, which had advanced movement, jetpacks, that sort of thing. But that's what got me back into the franchise, was advanced movement. Black Ops 4 didn't have that so much, though one of the characters, Torque, I think, had like a grappling hook. So once some of the guns get tweaked and some more weapon balances come, it'll be a lot better. But overall, the multiplayer is fantastic. It's fun. I haven't prestiged yet. I'm level 25 as of right now. I've got a bunch of double XP tokens, so I'm waiting till later levels to use them so I can hopefully get more shit unlocked quicker. Will I prestige? I don't know. This one I may not take as serious as Advanced Warfare, where I prestige like 14 times. And that means reaching level 56 each time. So you can tell how much I loved that game. But I really enjoy it, though. Like I said, a few nerfs and balances here and there. It'll be good. Let's talk about co-op. So co-op is something me and Alex played last night, and this is how it was pitched. It's supposed to continue the story. Once you beat the game, you're introduced to a new Russian guy who wants to take out the other freedom fighting group that is now splintered off into effectively a terrorist cell.
Yeah. And I quote, it says, in the game, as you beat it, the campaign continues in this mode. So,
yes, so you get one cutscene.
So listen to that. The campaign, the single player campaign continues here. So that's the expectation that you want going into it, is a continuation of the quality of the single player campaign.
Yes. So you're given
it's not.
Yeah. So the basic setup for it is you're given a set of objectives, you and 4 players, but you can only continue the quote unquote campaign Spec Ops in public matches, unless you have like a full friends list or something. But me and Alex there's only 2 of us, so we had to fill it with like randoms.
Yeah. And we'll preface this by saying you need to install two different install files to get this to work. The base game is like 6 different install files for different campaign parts. Like, I don't know why they split the game up into so many packs, but they did. But the Spec Ops is like a 5 gig download and then a second Spec Ops pack of 2 gigs to get it working. So if you're somebody who has limited bandwidth, keep in mind this game is 130 gigs.
Yeah,
in its current state. It's pretty big. And if you don't have a fast internet connection, you will have to, as many people said, leave this downloading overnight. And even if you're not going to play Spec Ops right away, my suggestion would be click the button to load into Spec Ops, because it's the only way to find the download. If you go to the Xbox store, you cannot find the download. It's an update that it requires, but it doesn't auto update unless you try to load the mode. So that might change in the future, but that's how it currently is. So do that and then shut down or walk away and let it install.
Yeah. So the mode is you have to accomplish different missions. There'll be a set of objectives you and your teammates have to do. As of right now, this mode is extremely broken. Me and Alex encountered multiple technical issues. I had textures not load properly. Abilities didn't work. I thought it was just me until YouTuber T. Martin mentioned things weren't working. Like one of the abilities I have.
I remember what I said. I said, "Fuck this, I'm done." And you're like, "Well," and we were trying to defend it at first, and then we find out it's not just me being frustrated. It was everybody, including like top players.
Yeah, like I thought maybe in this mode my abilities didn't work. Like I have an ability where I'm able to refresh ammo. And I thought, okay, maybe it's disabled in this mode, forcing you to do on-site procurement of weapons. And no, evidently that's a bug. So I'm like, okay. And you have to have teamwork to beat this. Unfortunately, the AI is ramped so up that the difficulty's insane.
I spawned in, and when you die, if your teammates don't all die at once and you have the ability to spawn in, you come in on a plane and then you parachute out. It launched me out of the plane where I hadn't pulled the parachute yet, and one of the AIs sniped me off 1 second into spawning before I even pulled the parachute, and then I had to wait again. Wow. And I was mad. Yeah. It should not be able to hit me at like 2,000 feet in the air.
That doesn't happen.
So that tells me that they've put it on like the insanity difficulty or something.
Yeah, because I would consider myself a relatively skilled player, and these are bots. For lack of a better term, these are generic enemies. They shouldn't be too difficult to take on with 4 relatively skilled human players. But we were on the second or third part of Operation Headhunter, and we fought one Juggernaut. I took him out with 1 rocket, kicked his ass. The next Juggernaut, he took 7 rockets to take down. And something about that don't seem right. And
like I understand when they're respawning pretty much consistently because you're supposed to be protecting an area. It's basically like defend a spot. But I'm noticing that like there's 4 of us and they're spawning 20 to 30 enemies at a time. And they're all coming from the same spot. They all kill you in 2 to 3 hits. And you could take this if you had a team of 8, not 4. But it seems like it's just way unbalanced that way. The other thing was it's not spawning the same types of enemies every time either. It seems like there might be a Juggernaut here, a Juggernaut there, but for the most part, it seems pretty random who the enemies are. So you can't really learn a pattern.
Yeah, like there's definitely some work that needs to be done in this. Although I can imagine it not being a top priority with multiplayer being the main focus right now.
Yeah, and that was the one Spec Op version. That's the one that's supposed to be the story mission, which by the way has no cutscenes. It's already told to you over the radio. It feels like very tacked on, like they didn't even put any effort in, and which is surprising considering how much effort and how good and polished the regular multiplayer and the single player is. This mode feels like we threw it on, and it's telling of it with the fact that it's not even included on the base game. It requires, even on the disc, it requires 2 different, like 5 gig and 2 gig downloads. So it didn't even ship on disc, which you know what I mean, which tells you it wasn't done until last minute. And then the other Spec Ops mode we tried, which was classic Spec Ops,
which is just basically horde mode.
Yeah, we get 30 seconds in.
Yeah, and they were swarming us and getting perfect headshots.
We were trading about 15 kills between us before we die every time, and we spawned about 7 or 8 times.
Yeah, and we're like, and I'm thinking I am not this shitty a player. I know I'm not. Like, if these were people, I'd be cutting them down left, right, and center. I'd have at least 2 or 3 kill streaks by now. But no, they were cutting us to ribbons. So for now, avoid Spec Ops mode, at least until it's rebalanced.
Don't interpret what we're saying here as saying the game is bad. The game is very, very, very good. It just has one very disappointing mode, which again is not critical. The most disappointing part of this is this is how they're continuing the story. Is in a mode that has basically no story and nobody can beat. So what's the point?
And from what I've read on Reddit, people who have beaten all these modes, you're gods among men. First off, there is no ending cutscene. The only cutscene you get is from the beginning of Spec Ops mode, where you get the mission briefing, and that's it. That's it.
So much for the end of the game telling you the campaign continues in Spec Ops. So
yeah, it's not quite like other games that have done this.
Like, part of me's like, you fucking lied, and then part of me's like, yeah, you fucking lied. So they have to if they wanted to continue the story mode, they should have continued it in the story mode at this point, or at least have made this the same difficulty, or have the option to lower the difficulty to the story mode.
Yeah, like I said, there needs to be some kind of a balancing patch to this at some point soon, so we'll see whether Infinity Ward does that. So let's sum up our thoughts on this. So pluses: the campaign mode is remarkably good. It'll take you 68 hours to beat. It doesn't pull a lot of punches, which is good. Not gratuitously so, but maybe you'll think about things a little bit differently. Characters are all likable. There's nobody that I hated. And it's just,
well, I mean, you hate the Russian bad guy.
Yeah, Barkov.
But you hate him, but everybody else
for the right reasons.
Even some of the other bad guys you don't hate because they have their reasons.
Yeah, like there's one point, I think it's Barkov, the main Russian bad guy. He says, I hate terrorists for doing this to my country. And he considers you people terrorists because they invaded your land and used a chlorine gas on you. But that's neither here nor there. Point of the matter is, campaign's good. Difficulty, it's pretty good, all things considered.
And there's about 6 difficulty settings you can set it to. I played most of it on normal, or like what would be the regular difficulty. I had to turn it down to easy for 2 parts, the ones we talked about earlier. Yeah, you're right. I'd say visually, audio-wise, single player, multiplayer, solid. Again, I don't have a ton of experience with the rest of the series, but I would say in the top echelon of their games.
Yes. Things I liked about the multiplayer: the meta is currently developing. It will take time, but it feels snappy. It feels responsive. This is good boots on the ground. It feels quicker in a lot of ways. And we'll see how the meta develops, especially as we go into the competitive esports scene with this in just a couple of months. Co-op mode, stay away from right now till it gets rebalanced and patched. So overall,
if I have to give an overall grade, just to give it a number grade, like if 10 out of 10 is perfect, It would lose 1 point initially for me because I'm a storyline guy, for being a short game. I like my games to be in the 15 to 40 hour mark as far as single player goes, and we're probably never going to see that again in a shooter. So it would have to be something, substantially amazing that I like lost my brain over to give it a 10 or a 9. It's good enough in my books to be a 9, but that promise of that campaign mode extending into Spec Ops, it leaves things a little disappointing. It seems there's a fair amount of load times even on the Xbox One X because of how much data it's loading. This might change if you had the ability to play it over a streaming service or on maybe the next gen systems. So it's sitting in there at about the 8 out of 10 for me. It's like a solid A- to an A.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the same thing. I'm saying 8 out of 10, and this comes as a veteran COD player. I do enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun. Can't wait to see what Infinity Ward does next with it. And I hope this brings more people into the franchise. And I hope to see... Oh, one thing we forgot to mention during this whole thing, the fact that we can play cross-platform. That's
correct. We just played together on the Xbox, but
I've had lobbies with like PlayStation people. I've been in lobbies with PC people where admittedly I get melted because mouse aiming, but I like the fact that you can all play together and cross progression. It's all linked to your Activision account.
Yeah, see that's how they're
great.
That's how they're getting away with that is creating a whole new server on the back end for them to, basically monitor your entire playthroughs on whatever platform you're on, which is pretty sweet. And more companies should be doing that, hopefully, in the future.
Absolutely. So, Call of Duty Modern Warfare gets an 8 out of 10 recommended by right now from us here at This Week in Geek. So we'll be back, guys, as we trek into the nerd news of the weird variety. We'll be back right after this.
The rules of engagement have changed. If you can't identify the target, you are the target.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter? I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
By the hand of Zeus, what manner of deviltry is this?
I love fake alien poop day.
And, of course, you have returned from places beyond! It is the weird news here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. And, of course, the strange, the unusual. Things occasionally fall out of the friggin' sky on this show. So, recently, Samsung's space selfie satellite plummets from the sky onto a Michigan horse farm. So a satellite that Samsung used for a PR stunt would send a selfie of model and actor Cara Delevingne into space has crash landed on a farm in Garrett County, Michigan. A woman. The
way you said that.
The way he said that.
And we're
Not
keeping
I meant it. Oh yeah, we're just gonna keep it in.
Next, you're just gonna start screaming stuff like sandwich,
person, object,
thing, bowling ball.
So, Nancy Mumby Wilkie had said, "This baby fell out of the sky and landed in our yard. It's never boring here on the Wilkie farm. Thank God there are no horses out, or it didn't hit a horse." Mumby Wilkie told the regional newspaper M Live that she and her husband were about to leave the house to tend to the horses when they heard a loud sound. They went outside to find a 4-legged box that was attached to a parachute caught in a tree. So, early Saturday morning, a Samsung Europe space selfie balloon came back down to Earth, according to a Samsung spokesperson. During this planned descent of the balloon to land in the U.S., weather conditions resulted in an early soft landing in a selected rural area. Samsung did not provide an answer if it plans to provide the Wilkie farm with any support for the inconvenience, but the spokesperson told Gizmodo, who I'm getting the story from, no injuries occurred and the balloon was subsequently retrieved. We regret any inconvenience this may have caused. You landed a satellite on my farm, man!
Yeah. You know what? That would require, for me, that would be, hey...
give us a couple phones at least.
No. Alex needs a new 80-inch curved OLED TV, please, because you could have killed me.
Yeah, that's true, because just this is a PR stunt. While cool, the satellite, in my opinion, should have been designed to burn up in the atmosphere.
Not
because,
potentially kill everybody on the farm. So
yeah, because
I would be like, guess who's giving me a $12,000 TV? And it would be them.
I mean, even under the best conditions, even a controlled descent, weather conditions can play a very big part in what happens. Like, satellites are a very exact science. If you don't get it right and telemetry's off by even just a little bit, bad things tend to fucking happen. And this was used for a selfie. Of all the things in all the world, some team of scientists, literal scientists, had to sit around a table and plan telemetry about this. So this wasn't just some guy sitting in an office in New York City saying, hey, you know what'd be cool? No, there was planning involved in this. So next time, Samsung, you decide to send something up into space and you want to do it for a PR stunt, okay, cool, but maybe be a little bit more sure where it's going to deposit. A rural area, sure, but unless you can plan an exact grid reference, maybe be careful.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, phone schmoan. Give me like the 80-inch like top of the line TV, you know, because all it would have taken was like, what if you were just walking out in the field? You're like, what's that? Boom, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly, because this thing could have very easily gone wrong. So moving on to our next story. This one is kind of cool. I've always been a fan of Canadian ufologist Stanton Friedman, who passed away a little while ago. So over his 60 years of researching phenomenon, it's being cataloged by professional archivists up in Canada. So according to a report from Motherboard, the project began back in January when staff at the provincial archives in New Brunswick, where Friedman lived, learned about all the stuff that this guy had. So they started to begin to archive it. So the total amount of the UFO material collected by Friedman over the last 60 years proved to be considerably huge. By the way of a staggering 5 cargo vans, jaw-dropping 300 or so boxes of paperwork were delivered to the office of the provincial archives, and they expect even more files to arrive over the next few weeks and months. Archivist Joanna Alton Kerr told CBC if they had lined up all the material they would have all the material they've received so far, it would stretch a stunning 200 feet. So they're looking at this, and the archivist is saying, well, we can find a single page of a letter or a document in one pile, another page somewhere across the room, another page tucked in a book, and so on. Since Friedman's material constitutes thousands of pieces of paperwork, and cataloging projects is one of the many underway at the archive, Kerr cautioned it could be quite some time before they are finished sorting through all the files, documents, and letters contained in the collection. According to Kerr, the staff at the provincial archive spend one day a week, which they call Friedman Fridays, working on the project. In a testament to just how long the job of organizing the collection might take, she estimates that at the current pace, it could take a decade before the full range of material is available to the public. Holy dog shit. And that's even if they were afforded 2 full-time archivists to focus solely on the Friedman collection, which seems to be more wishful thinking than a genuine possibility. Kerr posted, or I can't pronounce that word, that it would still require around 3 or 4 years of work to complete. I think that's pretty kick-ass. The fact that this collection of UFO material, research, presumably first-hand accounts, evidence, etc., was collected by one man over 60 years. And Stanton Friedman, I think, has a background in nuclear physics and other things. Basically, the guy was a genuine scientist, but he was also a believer. So the fact that the provincial archives, I'm not saying legitimizes his work, because maybe that's not the right word, but the fact that they want to have it available to people to take a look at some point is pretty important. And putting on the tinfoil hat here, if the government's going through it, anything sensitive, guarantee we're not going to see. But then again, I'm surprised at some of the documents that have slipped through the Freedom of Information Act in the United States. So that being said, what kind of information would you like to see out of this 60 years of info?
I'm not even sure.
Like, photographs would be one. which would be great. Because the technology at the time to fake photographs would be really, really friggin' hard, and you'd have to be really committed.
Yeah, I would want to see maybe interviews and see how things line up. But again, that's just such an immense amount of data that you could spend the next 10 years combing through it to glean real information out of it.
Yeah, because there's got to be something in there that doesn't smell right or might lead to something else.
Yeah, like I wonder if filtering through it, if you'll start to see a pattern of cover-ups or whether they be for like not like nefarious purposes, but like, you know what I mean? Like you'll see something where it's like, oh, there was some sort of military test, like a legit test, and then they clearly covered it up, and then you could look at that and then look at maybe more modern or documents that were once redacted that came out as part of the Freedom of Information Act, and then you're like, hey, so these things were actually probably covering up this actual thing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there could be information in there related to Shag Harbor, which is Canada's Roswell, which happened in, I want to say, which I want to say happened in the 1960s. There's also other information in there that there was a case I just learned about recently, happened just north of Winnipeg, and it was about a guy who was like a coal worker. Guy's pretty down to earth, and he told his story for like 20 years that he saw a UFO. He touched it, got burned by it. He was taken to the hospital for burns. And the doctors were like, we don't know how the hell this happened. And he kept telling his son the exact same story for 20 years. So his son's like, I don't think my dad's full of shit, guys. Not one detail has changed. And if someone was seeking fame and fortune, you'd think maybe little things would change over the years. So I don't know. I mean, I hope there's something in there. I hope the provincial archivist finds something neat. It'd be neat if we get a Freedman Friday special once a year. Like, hey, here's one complete document we've done. Check it out. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Moving on to my next story. This one I think is kind of cool. A sword discovered at the bottom of a river in Bosnia has been dubbed Excalibur, as the weapon was inexplicably, yes, inconceivable, found stuck in solid rock. The literal sword in the stone was reportedly spotted in the Verbas River a few months ago at a depth of around 36 feet and was removed from the water last week. The task proved rather tricky as divers had to carefully pull the weapon from the rock while they were underwater as to not damage the precious find. A historian who examined the sword after it had been retrieved from the river estimated it could be around 700 years old. It is theorized the weapon may have been connected to the nearby medieval community of, I can't pronounce this word, something with a Z, Zivkav, which once boasted, yeah, I can't pronounce it, which once boasted a sizable castle that was home to Bosnian nobility. Experts are now studying the sword in an attempt to determine how and why it wound up embedded in a rock. As one can imagine, the discovery has spawned a number of jokes suggesting the individual who pulled the weapon from the stone should now be the new ruler of Bosnia. I agree with this. If you find the sword, you pull it out, it's yours.
All I can think of is the movie Euro Trip from like, what was it, 03 or 04? When they when they're like, oh dear God, we're in Eastern Europe, and it's like all these dilapidated buildings, and then they find the guy, and he's like, I love Americans. He's like, it's a good thing you came here. In the winter, can be very depressing. Because that's all I picture in my head. Or they gave a guy a nickel as a tip, and he slaps his boss because he's going to open his own hotel. Like, yes, I want it to be like the slumlord King Arthur of Bosnia.
But it's funny, this is not the first time I've heard of swords being found in rivers or stuff like that. There was a girl who found one, it was either this year or last year, in like a stream or a river in England or somewhere in Europe.
Well, think about it. It's people either go to clean them or they drowned during like the Middle Ages, or things shift because of the tectonic plates, and then there's new rivers created, and something that was once buried then comes up to the surface and flows downstream.
Yeah, or people just after a battle or whatever, just throw a sword in the lake or something like that. Like there's hundreds of reasons why, thousands of reasons why these swords end up there. But it's just the fact that they're being found now. Kind of cool, a little bit of romanticizing. I found Excalibur, a strange woman in the water offered me a sword. Hey, I think that's pretty cool. So our last story this week, to tie back in the Halloween, to bring it all around circle again. So if you happened to be trick-or-treating in Middleship Township, New Jersey last week, well, you may have gotten a surprise. But New Jersey police believe it was an isolated incident. They are warning parents to be vigilant after a small bag of white powder found in the children's trick-or-treat bag was distributed at a community event. The powder later tested positive for fucking heroin. The incident took place Friday at the Shore Family Success Center in Rio Grande, according to WPVI reported. A mother called police after her son found a bag of white powder in his trick-or-treat bag. Officials urged parents to be cautious of any suspicious-looking or unfamiliar packaging and baggies that are found in their children's trick-or-treat bags, even if it is handed out at a community event. And this is not the first fucked up trick-or-treat thing that I heard. There was a story in New Hampshire, I want to say, or Connecticut, one of them, where someone actually got THC edibles this particular Halloween. So the urban legend has finally come true with edibles and heroin, of all fucking things. So,
well, I mean,
it's about that time.
What city was it again?
This was in Rio Grande.
Of course.
Because New Jersey. That's what happens when you cross the river. Yeah, this is pretty fucked up. I mean, this could have ended really fucking tragically. Because enough heroin, I mean, I watch a lot of Drugs, Inc. because the show's just damned interesting. If a child decided to eat that thinking it was fun dip, that kid's dead. Or they're going to need one of those.
Ooh, they pass out. Well, you would die pretty damn quick. So
yeah, you're not, unless you have one of those pen things, those Narcans or whatever, you're not coming back from that. I mean, especially if a small child gets this. This was no accident. Because someone, like, this was at a community event. And, like, I don't know. I also heard another story where someone actually locally to us up here in Ontario, someone had found needles, real like sewing needles in like Kit Kat bars or something. So the world is unfortunately a dangerous place, full of dangerous people. And you'd think the one time of the year you should be able to go out and have fun. Shit happens. I mean, to kind of end this weird news on a happier note, there was another story that came out of Toronto this past weekend, once again tying into Halloween. Someone who's a particularly talented pumpkin carver had carved all 100 Generation 2 Pokemon onto pumpkins.
Which is pretty neat.
That's pretty amazing.
Behind that, oof. Like the only thing I could think of that like really brought, I guess, pumpkin carving like art into the forefront was, remember back in the day when they used to have the pumpkins on Roseanne?
Yeah.
That's probably the first time I saw like inventive ones being used. I'm sure it was used before, but I feel like that's what brought it into the public spotlight. And now you get these crazy carvings.
Oh yeah, like I've got a friend of mine, her name's Abby, and some of her pumpkin art that she posts like every year is phenomenal. I'm like, how are you this talented? And just to go through the process, even one of my cousins, I think it's cousin Ethan or Blake, I can't remember which, is an amazing pumpkin carver. He always carves.
Sorry, you know your country when you refer to your cousins as cousin so-and-so. That's a very northern thing to say. Most people don't say that. But you say, my cousin this. It's like, you know, cousin this? It's like, cousin it? It's just a very northern thing I've noticed.
So, yeah. Was it Ethan? I don't know. Was it Blake? I don't know.
One of the hillbillies. One of those hillbillies, you know.
Yeah, one of the family members who lives in the woods.
Yes, woodfolk, also known for woodfolk, also known for leaving woods porn, or is that no? Forest porn is more of a city thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a you problem.
That's not just a me problem. You saw that there were ads about that shit going around everywhere. That's a city problem.
I need to find more Reddit threads that talk about forest porn.
I did not.
Curious.
You thought I made that up.
I really did, because it sounds that sounds like Alex.
That sounds like something that would happen to me, and it did happen to me. But it's also not something that's local to me. It's something that's a cross Canada thing, and I think maybe even the States.
Forest porn. And on that note, we will end things here on the weird news, and we're going to take a break to listen to Alex as he gives his thoughts on Mill Creek Entertainment's Ultraman. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
Ultraman, here he comes from the sky. Ultraman, watch our hero fly. In a super jet he comes from a billion miles away, from a distant planet land. Comes our hero,
Mill Creek Entertainment is doing something very exciting. They have signed an exclusive contract to release, as far as I can tell, every single season of the Ultraman series on Blu-ray, remastered. So I guess they're getting their prints from the Japanese company that owns it. But it's the first time that I've heard of a company signing a deal like this, where they're getting every single series dating back to the 60s. And the first two are now out, and that is the Ultra Q, which was the black and white series that ran first, and then later on in that same year, Ultraman, the very first, in the Ultraman series came out. Now, Ultraman had a DVD release here from Mill Creek a few years ago, and I think BCI Eclipse years ago before that. And they had English dubs because they were originally dubbed for television on Ultraman, which, for us was season 1, but in Japan was season 2, because that was the first color series. It was dubbed by the same team that did the Speed Racer series back in the 60s. So, we're talking, this is way, way, way before Power Rangers or anything like that ever made it here. All we had seen of that style had been basically the Godzilla films. Now, with these re-releases here, or the remasters, where they cleaned it up, and it looks pristine, like they look top tier. They did not include the English dubs. Maybe there was an issue with that, because Mill Creek's had them before, so I'm kind of wondering, maybe they just why they chose not to use them. Maybe they're uncut or something. There might be some reason as to why they're not including it, because that was a bit disappointing, because at least for the Ultraman season, there was an English dub of the entire show, as far as I know. So what you get is everything's remastered, 1080p in its original, full frame aspect ratio, Japanese DTS audio with new translated English subtitles, which is great. Now, there's not any other special features on here, but you do get a digital copy to use with Movie Spree, their streaming service, which is cool. So they come with a slip cover in one of those thick Amaray cases. It's kind of weird that Ultra Q actually has a few empty disc spots, but that's because they're using a generic case that can hold them, and the Ultraman season has more. They're stylized in such a way that it says right on the back, Spine Series 1, and they're going to have Series 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, all the way up to modern day. They're releasing 1 to 2 series, it seems, per month. There is also, for these, a steelbook that's limited edition that was limited to pre-orders or limited to the first run, which I did not receive, but would be pretty cool if you're a steelbook fan. There is also, with each release, a fairly hefty paper stock episode description guide where they go into details of every episode and a bit of an essay on the creation of the show with some pictures, which is always a nice little touch to add. Well worth the price they're asking. The MSRP on this changes depending on what store you're buying from, but you'll be able to find these on either Mill Creek's website themselves, You can find it on Walmart. You can find it on Amazon. You're basically going to find it anywhere that Mill Creek distributes their films to. If you're a big fan of the monster movies or Power Rangers, the Super Sentai series, all that sort of stuff, Kamen Rider, these are a piece of history. And what's great is that for some reason the films were preserved quite well, considering a lot of stuff from the 60s isn't. And they almost look like they were filmed yesterday. Like, that's how clean they got the transfers to look in this. Audio is another story, because most television audio really didn't get good and wasn't really recorded high quality until the late 80s, early 90s. So that's the only part that's really going to sound dated, but it is clean and easy to hear the dialogue, which, again, I have no idea what they're saying because it's in Japanese, but the subtitles are easy to read, and you can get the what's happening based on what's happening on screen. The special effects range from hilarious to actually quite clever and good, and it's nice to see that it's getting the treatment it always deserved in a premium quality release at, still at a budget price, which is surprising. So I can't wait to see the other ones as they come out, and they're going to be, sitting on my shelf as a staple of, my watching whenever I feel down or on a rainy day, or I'm like, you know what, let's watch some people in rubber suits get the crap kicked out of them by Ultraman.
Thank you for joining us this week on ThisWeekInGeek.net. We always appreciate your listening to the show, giving us feedback across our social medias, especially when we post the show to Facebook or Twitter. So you can follow us at ThisWeekInGeek on there. I don't update the Instagram, so it's in our exit thing that Tristan did a while ago. I'm trying to think. So coming up for the next little while, oh my God, November is going to be just as heavy on game releases on us. I'll probably have a review of EA's Jedi Fallen Order. I'm not getting a review copy. I bought it for my birthday. So when that comes out, I'll probably rip through that real quick. We also have Pokemon Sword and Shield coming out in the next 2 weeks.
One of us will cover that. We just, because even if we don't get a review copy, we'll be getting it.
Yeah, exactly. I got Sword from my sister-in-law Kara for my birthday.
Then if I have the option, I'll get Shield.
Yeah, I just want my duck and my bunny Pokemon to be maxed out.
I have Nintendo provided me with a year's subscription to their online service, as it's been a year since it launched, I believe. Has it been a year since it launched already? Yeah, 1 year. And because they want to show off basically all the new stuff that's come on in the last year or so, now that they got Super Nintendo games and everything. So I'll be talking about that on the next show. I also have, what do I have? Oh, I have when is the next show coming out? That's the real question, because I have something that might not be, okay, so 2 weeks from now, I'll be talking about a movie called, what the hell? Can I even talk about it? I'll be talking about something I can't talk about immediately.
Don't you love embargoes?
Basically, I have a streaming copy, a screener copy of a movie that I can't talk about until next week, and then I can't release review until a week after that.
We should also have a review of Death Stranding. We're just waiting on our review code, as most outlets in Canada are right now. So at least I know we're not alone.
Basically, most outlets are going to be getting theirs the day of or the day before launch. But then there are some, in the States where they've already got their reviews out. So it's sort of, they've been staggering out the content, and so far it sounds pretty good. I've tried to avoid reading anything so that I can go in cold.
I've read most of them, and the reviews are all over the place. So I'm looking forward to playing this myself. I'm going to wait and see what you say about it, because they have been from 6s to 10s. So
which
we'll have
is
to wait and
wildly out there. Usually you don't see that. There's usually a small distribution curve of, within 1 to 1.5 points of each other.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a Hideo Kojima game, so weirdness will abound. Next week on the show, I will have Luigi's Mansion on the Nintendo Switch. I just didn't get a chance to get to it this week, mostly due to CoD and another game that I'm working on. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed hanging out with us this week. I'm sure there will be a Turtle Treasure. We're working on our holiday gift guides, which will be out in December. And we should have something involving Black Friday as a short prototype special, probably 20 minutes or so, just telling you where the best deals are this month for your buck, and especially as we near the next console generation.
Exactly. And as soon as if there's like a Nintendo Direct or a Sony State of Play that comes out, I think that's probably the best times to start doing the prototype more often is whenever they drop one of those.
Yes.
Instead of like, because we could put it, on the news and we can summarize it on the main show, but it's probably best when it's fresh to get one of those recorded and drop it the day of or the day after or so, because that way it gives us more time to go in depth into them. Because we've done it before, we've gone pretty in depth on the main show here, but if it's going to be a 30-minute discussion on what was dropped, then we should probably do it on separate ones. And it's an excuse to get more prototypes out instead of a couple times a year.
Exactly. So anyway, lots of content coming up this month. So sorry the show's a day late, but I wanted to get Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 out on the Nintendo Switch so you guys could hear that. So anyway, hopefully you will enjoy the rest of your week. I know I will. So until next time, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman Dodson. Live free or die hard. And as always, as my friend Jackie Bam Bam might say, be cool, be kind, be careful. We'll catch you next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.